I see the way that a lot of businesses do annual planning. It is a lot like the way that individuals set New Year's resolutions. And if you know anything about New Year's resolutions, you know that in general by February, if not late January, they've all been completely abandoned. And in my experience, most of the businesses that we've owned and operated, and most of the entrepreneurs that we work with, their annual plans are generally abandoned by January, February as well. So I would encourage everybody, and we could talk about this, don't spend this next time doing annual planning for this next year.
Hey, everybody. This is actually take 2 of this episode of Business Lunch because apparently Apple decided to hijack Ryan and make him voiceless. Apple stole Ryan's voice. That's what we're going to call this episode. What do you think?
I'm suing them.
Yeah,
I'm definitely suing them. Yeah,
I like it.
I can do that.
They got $3 trillion or so of value. I mean, they should give you a little bit of it, even just for asking, I think.
Well, that's what I always do. Anytime, we have a friend. I just had a guy that I know who their business raised about, I think, $85 million. And anytime I hear about that, I'm never like, congratulations or anything. My question is always, can I just have $1 million? Because the way I see it, they've got a lot. I would like to now I intend to do nothing for this, mind you.
Of course.
And it's not a loan. I'm not going to pay it back. I just want to have it. And so far, nobody's done this. Nobody's done it. But I figure
enough times.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even if you got, say, a 1% take rate and you ask 1,000 people, that's like $500,000.
It's at least might be like double that even. Yeah. So, that's my goal. I don't know if that's helpful for anybody. We could end the episode there. Just ask rich people for money, and I think they say yes.
I think it's pretty good.
Episode over.
Well, just in case I didn't say this,
when technology breaks on us, we just lose all our crap.
So, just in case I didn't say it, welcome to Business Lunch. My name is Roland Frazier, and my co-host here, Ryan Dice, is joining, and apparently has a big lawsuit he's about to file against Apple. So, but I guess that would be a good segue into that's going to clearly take up some of your next year working on that. Yeah. My guess is they will not go quietly into that. Let's talk about planning for next year. Other than that money making scheme of the asking people for money and the getting money from Apple, what do you got going on next year, and how do you go about deciding that? Both, I like talking about this too, personally and business wise. So let's start with business.
Yeah. So it's interesting that this is the time of the year we're recording this. We're now in early December. This is the time of year when companies and entrepreneurs and people start getting very like, let's start thinking about next year. And I got to tell you, I think it's a gigantic mistake. I see the way that a lot of businesses do annual planning. It is a lot like the way that individuals set New Year's resolutions. And if you know anything about New Year's resolutions, you know that in general by February, if not late January, they've all been completely abandoned. And in my experience, most of the businesses that we've owned and operated, and most of the entrepreneurs that we work with, their annual plans are generally abandoned by January, February as well. So I would encourage everybody, and we could talk about this, don't spend this next time doing annual planning for this next year. I think the annual plan is a giant mistake. I think it's a sport.
So you think you're more of like a 5-year plan? Do it like a 5 and 10-year plan.
I don't like that either.
Okay.
I think for most entrepreneurial businesses, and definitely the 10-year thing. It's like, come on, y'all. Like, you have no freaking clue where you're going to be in 10 years. You tell me 10 years.
Look at what happened in the last 10 years, right? I'm thinking, I don't know for sure, but effectively, you've got crypto, you've got AI, you've got pandemic. I mean,
that was your big one.
Right? Come on.
You have no freaking clue. And I get it. A lot of big companies will do, will do this level of planning. They have floors filled with analysts. And guess what? They're still wrong. Now, if you want to create an annual financial plan, because that's kind of what you need to do projections and budgeting, fine. But I wouldn't recommend doing annual strategic planning. because in my experience, the annum, it is too long to be like in any way really predictable, but it's too short to be that meaningful. So what we
Yeah.
do, and you know this, we like to think out in 3 years. I love the idea of 3 years because 3 years is long enough to do something really cool, meaningful. I mean, in 3 years, you could be a fundamentally different business than what you are today. I'm not saying you can in 12 months, but you can, through the power of compounding, achieve some really, really, really big stuff in 3 years. And if you look at like
Yeah.
most private equity companies, they're looking to basically go 3 to 5 and 3 to 5. In other words, have a 3x or 5x growth over 3 to 5 years. So we're just going to kind of take the lower end of that, generally accepted scale, and we think out 3 years. And so I do think that now is a time, if you have a 3-year plan, to evaluate how are we progressing along that 3-year plan? Do we need to make any updates? So that is something that we do around this time. Then what we do is we break the 3-year plan up into 12 chunks, 12 90-day sprints, because there are 12 quarters in 3 years. And so we never really do annual planning. We are always thinking out 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. And then we're thinking for the next 90 days. So what we're doing right now is we're going to begin the process of doing our Q1 sprint planning. And we've just found this to be far more effective. You get a much tighter planning cadence. And if you're meeting and you're doing quarterly planning, then you never really need to meet for the year. So that's kind of structurally how we do that. Your thoughts?
I think it's great. I agree with it, and have participated in helping formulate it. So I like what we do that we thought to do. I think it's great. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I think that the same does apply. I've now brought this into my personal life as well, because although we would be thinking about, kind of adopted this years and years ago, right? This is one of kind of the core frameworks and structures that we teach at the Scalable Company. I never brought it into my personal life. Still, for my personal life, I would set an annual plan. I would have like an annual goal. And I just found the same thing to be true. As hard as I tried, it just wasn't there. But when I thought out, okay, where do I want to be in 3 years and follow the same structure? Okay, what does that mean for each quarter? Look, if you do that and you break it up into quarters, you effectively have a 12-month plan. It's there, right? But now you just get to measure along. So that same process is how I think about it. And so I don't really set annual goals for myself. I set quarterly goals. And I've just found that to be far more effective.
I think that's cool. What do you do to monitor?
I have it's the same planning and meeting cadence so essentially the meeting rhythm that we have at our company is we set a 3-year target. What's our 3-year plan, right? And that is going to get looked at about, every year, and really every quarter we're looking how we're progressing towards, our 12Q plan. And do we need to make any substantial pivots? Sometimes, if you do an acquisition or maybe you have a sale or maybe there's a pandemic, look, sometimes you need to modify your 3-year plan. It's not chiseled in stone. So you're going to take a look at it every 90 days to get a sense of how are we progressing towards it. But you're going to set your 3-year target. In general, you're not going to reevaluate that. You're not going to reset it until, wait for it, 3 years later. You are then going to do quarterly 90-day sprint planning sessions. And this is a 1 day, half day to 1 day, like we're going to plan this thing out. So I do that every single quarter. I take about a half day to say, what are my habits like? What are my inputs like? What resources do I need to acquire so that I can stay up on my next quarter's goal? I'm also going to do a monthly review. I'm going to look back on each month and say, did I do what I said I was going to do? What tweaks, if any? And then once a week, I do a weekly check-in. And so on Sunday, I say what needs to be true this next week for me to stay on track for my quarterly targets and my quarterly goals. And that is the exact same cadence that we follow at the company. So for me personally, I've got a meeting with myself and Emily and I, my wife. We'll meet and have a conversation, typically Sunday evenings, to say like what needs to happen this week. We're going to get alignment there. So we've got our weekly check-in meeting. The same thing happens at the company. It just happens on Monday. So on Monday, we do the weekly check-in meeting to everybody get aligned on what needs to be true that week. We do a monthly business review. We do quarterly sprint plans. I follow the exact same cadence personally.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really cool to apply it that way. I look at it, and I have a question. So if you've set a 3-year plan now, you set your 3-year thing that you want to have happen. Are you not extending that by a year each year that you go along, or are you like waiting for 3 years and then you're going to do a new 3-year plan after 3 years, and this one will just be modified along the way? So you're not kind of redoing a 3-year plan based on what you've learned from the past year, or how does that work?